My beloved child. Something has changed in the heart of the person you were never able to forget. Right now, they're standing at a crossroads, carrying a decision they haven't told you about yet. They've replayed your memories, your conversations, your silence, and even the moments when neither of you knew what to say. And there is one thought that keeps returning to them: what if I lose them because I waited too long? That is why this message feels so urgent. They aren't simply thinking about you anymore. They are preparing to do something that could completely change the direction of your connection. Don't skip, because what comes next explains why they've been unusually quiet, why their emotions have suddenly become stronger, and why they desperately want you to open this message before they make the biggest decision of their life. Something huge is waiting for you, and the first clue is connected to something they recently realized about you. There was a moment when they expected you to react differently. They thought you would chase, question them, or demand an explanation. But you didn't. You stepped back. You protected your heart. You continued living even while a part of you was still wondering what was happening inside theirs. And that silence affected them more than you could ever imagine. It forced them to face a truth they had been avoiding: they could no longer assume you would always be there waiting. Suddenly, the possibility of losing your presence became real. That realization shook something loose inside them. They began asking themselves questions they had avoided for far too long. What am I waiting for? How much longer can I keep pretending this doesn't matter? What happens if they finally move on? Stay till the end, because there is another layer to this story, and it explains why their next decision may involve you in a way you never expected. And now comes the part they have been keeping closest to their heart. They have been considering a choice that requires courage, honesty, and a completely different approach than before. They know they cannot keep giving you mixed signals. They know silence has created too many unanswered questions. Most importantly, they know that if they make this decision, there will be no going back to the way things were. That is why the words in this title matter so much: please open this. It isn't simply about opening a message. It represents their fear that they may finally reveal what they have been carrying inside. They want you to hear them before they choose their next step. Don't skip this moment, because the decision they're weighing has a hidden reason, and when you discover what caused them to reach this point, you may finally understand why their behavior changed so suddenly. There's a reason their heart keeps pulling them back to you, even after they convinced themselves they could move forward without saying anything. They recently remembered something incredibly small about you, something you probably never realized mattered, and that memory opened an emotional door they had been trying to keep closed. Suddenly, all the excuses they had created began falling apart. They started seeing your connection differently. They realized that what they felt for you wasn't something they could simply silence by staying busy, pretending to be unaffected, or waiting for time to erase it. Don't skip, because this is where their biggest internal battle begins. They're caught between what feels safe and what feels true, and for the first time, they're seriously considering choosing the truth. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the next realization is the reason they may finally reach out. They've been wondering whether you still feel the same way. They don't know what exists behind your silence, and that uncertainty has been weighing heavily on them. There are moments when they almost send the message, almost say everything, almost tell you exactly what has been happening inside their heart. Then fear takes over. They erase it. They put the phone down. They tell themselves they'll wait another day. But another day keeps becoming another week, and deep inside, they know waiting has already cost them precious time. What they haven't admitted is that their fear isn't really about rejection. It's about finally hearing the answer to a question they've carried for far too long: if I finally tell them the truth, will they still want me in their life? And that question is pushing them closer to a decision that could change everything. But there's one thing they haven't told you yet, and this is the part that makes their situation completely different. They aren't only deciding whether to contact you. They're deciding whether to change something significant in their life because of what they now understand about your connection. They've realized that staying where they are emotionally has become impossible. Something inside them is demanding clarity. They want to stop wondering what could have happened and finally find out what could happen if they choose honesty. That's why the words, "Please open this," carry so much emotion. Behind those words is a person silently hoping you'll give them one opportunity to explain everything before they make their biggest decision. And just when you think you understand what that decision is about, a hidden detail is about to reveal why they waited this long. Something inside them shifted the moment they realized that you might actually be moving forward without them. They had secretly believed there would always be more time, another conversation, another opportunity to explain what they couldn't say before. But now, that certainty is gone. They're beginning to understand that your life doesn't pause while they figure out their feelings. And that realization has created a completely different kind of urgency. They've been looking back at every moment when they could have been honest but chose silence instead. Every unanswered message. Every almost confession. Every time they wanted to say, "I miss you," but replaced it with something casual. Don't skip, because the emotion behind those moments is finally catching up with them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and there's a reason they suddenly feel like they have one final opportunity to tell you what's really happening inside their heart. They've also been imagining a future where you aren't part of their story anymore, and that thought affected them more deeply than they expected. At first, they tried to convince themselves they would be fine. They told themselves that people come and go, that feelings eventually fade, and that maybe distance was simply meant to happen. But then they imagined you becoming happy somewhere else, sharing your time with someone who gives you the certainty they failed to give you. That image forced them to confront something painful. They don't want to become a memory in your life. They want another chance to become part of your present. And now their biggest question isn't whether they care about you. They already know they do. Their question is whether they're brave enough to act before the opportunity disappears. That is why this message feels so urgent. They aren't asking you to simply read words. They're hoping you'll understand the emotion hidden behind them. And here is where everything becomes even more unexpected. The decision they're considering may have started with something you did without even realizing its importance. Maybe you walked away quietly. Maybe you stopped explaining yourself. Maybe you stopped trying to prove how deeply you cared. Whatever it was, your change forced them to look at themselves differently. For the first time, they could no longer blame timing, circumstances, or confusion. They had to ask themselves whether they had been the one delaying something that mattered. And now they are preparing to make a choice that could finally bring clarity to both of you. But there's one final piece they need to settle before they can make that choice, and it involves something they have never had the courage to tell you directly. The silence between you has started speaking louder than any conversation ever could. They've been sitting with feelings they once thought they could control, and lately those feelings have become impossible to ignore. Every ordinary moment seems to remind them of you. A song, a familiar place, a phrase someone says, even the smallest memory can suddenly bring you back into their mind. But what really changed them was realizing that they may have misunderstood your silence. They once thought you had stopped caring. Now they're wondering if you simply stopped chasing because you were tired of carrying the connection alone. That realization has been haunting their thoughts. Don't skip, because this is where their emotional hesitation begins turning into determination. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the next revelation explains why they're no longer comfortable leaving everything unspoken. They've imagined what it would feel like to finally sit across from you and tell you everything without hiding behind pride, hesitation, or carefully chosen words. In that imagined conversation, they don't want to pretend anymore. They want to explain why they pulled away, why certain moments became confusing, and why they sometimes acted as though they didn't care when the truth was completely different. They know an explanation cannot erase the past, but they believe honesty could finally give both of you something you've been missing: clarity. And that's why they keep coming back to the same thought: I need them to hear this before I decide what I'm going to do. There is a message forming inside them, and it carries more emotion than they've allowed themselves to show. What they say next could completely change how you understand everything that happened before. But there is still one hesitation standing between them and that decision. They're afraid that once they reveal the truth, nothing can return to the way it was. They know you may ask questions they've avoided answering. They know you may want to understand why they waited so long. And deep down, they know you deserve those answers. Yet something stronger than their hesitation is beginning to rise. They're realizing that uncertainty is becoming harder to live with than honesty. That is the turning point. They're no longer asking, should I say something? They're asking, how do I finally say it? And there's one sentence they have rehearsed in their mind more times than you could imagine. When that sentence finally reaches you, you'll understand why they kept saying, please open this, and why the biggest decision of their life may already be closer than you think. Tonight, their thoughts are circling around one question they can no longer escape: what if I never tell them? That question has become heavier than the fear of saying everything. They've spent so much time protecting their emotions that they forgot what it feels like to be completely honest. But now they're realizing that keeping everything inside hasn't made the feelings disappear, it has only made them stronger. They remember the moments when you needed reassurance and they gave you silence. They remember times when you were waiting for clarity while they were secretly fighting their own emotions. And now they understand something they didn't understand before: you weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for something real. Don't skip, because this realization is changing the decision they're preparing to make. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the words they're preparing to reveal could finally explain why they became so distant when their feelings were actually becoming deeper. There's another truth they've been slowly accepting. They don't want a connection built around guessing games anymore. They don't want you wondering what their silence means, or whether their actions match what they feel. They want to know where they stand with you, even if the answer requires them to become vulnerable. That's why they've been mentally preparing for a conversation they once believed they could avoid forever. In their mind, they can already picture your reaction. They imagine the questions you might ask. They imagine the silence after they finally confess what they have been holding inside. And strangely, instead of running from that possibility, they're beginning to feel relieved by it. Because even if the conversation changes everything, at least the truth will finally be spoken. But what they haven't realized is that you may already have noticed more than they think, and that could make their next move completely different from what they originally planned. Now comes the moment they've been approaching all along. They're standing between the life they've been living and the life they secretly wish they could build. One path allows everything to remain familiar, comfortable, and unspoken. The other requires them to finally step forward and acknowledge what their heart has been trying to tell them. And they know which path keeps appearing in their thoughts. That is why this message feels like a final invitation. Not because everything is ending, but because something has reached the point where it can no longer remain hidden. They want you to open this before they make the decision, because your response may determine what happens next. But there is one final realization they have just reached, and it changes the meaning of everything they have been feeling until now. The decision is no longer just a thought in their mind, it has become something they're emotionally preparing themselves to act on. They've reached the point where pretending everything is fine feels impossible. They keep remembering the moments when they had an opportunity to tell you the truth, and each time they stayed quiet, they created another unanswered question between you. Now they're looking at those moments differently. They understand that hesitation had a price, and they don't want to keep paying it. Don't skip, because this is where the story turns from what they feel into what they may actually do. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the next realization reveals why they've been preparing themselves emotionally before making this life-changing choice. What they want most isn't some perfect movie moment. They want honesty. They want to look you in the eyes, or finally put the truth into words, and stop hiding behind uncertainty. They want you to know that the distance never meant you were forgotten. The silence never meant you were unimportant. And the moments when they appeared completely unaffected were often the moments when they were trying hardest to keep their emotions under control. They now realize that you deserved clarity much earlier. That realization has softened something inside them. Instead of asking, "How can I protect myself?" they're beginning to ask, "How can I stop hurting the person I care about through my hesitation?" And that question has brought them closer to the decision they've been avoiding. But there's something even more emotional happening beneath all of this. They're beginning to understand that the biggest decision isn't simply whether they should come closer to you. It's whether they're willing to become the person capable of giving this connection the honesty, consistency, and emotional courage it deserves. They know saying the right words means nothing if their actions don't follow. So before they reach out, they're confronting their own doubts, their old habits, and every reason they previously used to hold back. This is why the message feels so urgent. They aren't just asking you to open a message, they're hoping you'll open the door to a conversation that could finally reveal what has been hidden for so long. And just when they think they've made up their mind, one unexpected thought makes them stop. Because they suddenly realize what they could lose if they wait even one moment longer. The thought that stopped them wasn't about fear anymore. It was about you. They suddenly imagined what it would feel like if they never got another chance to tell you the truth. No more almost conversations. No more waiting for the perfect moment. No more hoping that somehow you would understand what they couldn't explain. And that realization hit them with a completely different kind of clarity. They understood that sometimes the biggest regret isn't making the wrong choice, it's refusing to make a choice at all. Don't skip, because this is the moment their hesitation begins to disappear. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the decision they've been silently carrying is finally becoming real. They're no longer asking themselves whether you matter. They're asking themselves how much longer they can keep living as though you don't. They've already imagined the first words they would say to you. They may not sound perfect. They may come out slowly. They may even carry nervousness because there are emotions behind those words they've hidden for far too long. But the message underneath them is simple: I should have told you this sooner. They want to explain that the distance wasn't proof that their feelings disappeared. In many ways, the distance gave them the space to finally understand those feelings. They began recognizing your value in the quiet moments, when there was no conversation to distract them and no familiar presence to make everything feel normal. And now they're realizing that waiting for certainty may only create more uncertainty. So they're preparing to take the step they once kept postponing. But there's still one question they need answered before they can fully commit to that choice, and that question is whether your heart still has room for them. That is why the words, "Please open this," feel so powerful. Behind them is someone who knows they can't control your response, but they can finally control whether they tell you the truth. They're reaching the point where honesty matters more than pride, clarity matters more than hesitation, and the possibility of a new beginning matters more than staying trapped inside an old pattern. Something is changing, and you may soon notice it through a message, a conversation, a sudden attempt to reconnect, or a moment when they finally stop hiding behind silence. Don't skip what comes next, because this isn't just about what they want to say, it's about what they're finally ready to do. And the biggest decision they've been preparing to make may lead to one conversation neither of you will ever forget.